Long before the first coins were minted, before kings or bankers existed, human civilization had already built its first temple, the Temple of Debt. Thousands of years ago, in ancient Mesopotamia, people carved not prayers, but numbers on clay tablets. These weren't records of faith, they were records of who owed what to whom. The earliest civilizations didn't run on gold or silver, they ran on trust, obligation, and memory. In those temples, debt wasn't just economic, it was moral. If you owed something, you weren't just financially guilty, you were spiritually bound. The words for debt and sin in ancient Sumerian, Aramaic, and Hebrew were the same, because to owe was to offend the divine order itself. The earliest gods weren't creators or destroyers, they were bookkeepers, watching every promise made, every payment missed. Temples became the first banks, and priests became the first accountants. Grain, silver, livestock, everything was measured, recorded, and sanctified under divine eyes. Paying your debt was no different from offering a sacrifice. To repay was to cleanse your soul. To default was to invite divine wrath. And so, debt became invisible, yet omnipresent. It wasn't something you could touch. It was something you carried within you, like guilt. This was humanity's first invisible god, one that didn't need statues or altars, only belief. From that moment onward, the idea of owing became the foundation of civilization itself. Before we learned to pray, we learned to promise. Before we built kingdoms, we built ledgers. And somewhere between those clay tablets and modern credit cards, we forgot the truth that money didn't create debt. Debt created money. As civilizations grew, so did their ledgers. What began as simple temple records slowly transformed into instruments of power. The priests who once tallied grain and silver were replaced by kings who tallied empires. And those kings soon realized a terrifying truth. Whoever controls debt, controls people. In Babylon, rulers decreed debt jubilees, forgiving loans to reset society and prevent revolt. But forgiveness was power, not mercy. In Egypt, taxes were collected not just for the kingdom, but for the gods themselves. Paying tribute wasn't simply an economic duty. It was a holy ritual, a sign of loyalty to both throne and heaven. Every coin minted bore the face of a ruler, a silent message. Your faith in this coin is your faith in me. Kings became divine not because they ruled armies, but because they ruled the belief system of value. They didn't just govern, they defined what wealth meant. Rome perfected this art. The emperor's seal on each denarius wasn't decoration, it was theology. To spend Roman money was to believe in the empire's eternity. And when the empire fell, so did its faith, proving that money, like religion, survives only as long as people believe. Taxation became worship, inflation became punishment, and debt became the empire's invisible chain, stretching from palaces to peasants, binding all in silent obedience. Thus, the divine ledger was born, a system where morality, money, and monarchy fused into one. The gods no longer needed temples. They had found a new vessel, the treasury. And from that treasury, kings learned to do what gods once did, create debt out of nothing, and call it destiny. When the old empires fell, their temples and treasuries crumbled, but the faith in debt survived. The religion of money simply changed its priests. In medieval Europe, the church became the new guardian of wealth and morality. It condemned usury, the sin of charging interest, yet quietly built a vast financial network behind closed doors. The Templars were the first holy bankers. Crusaders trusted them with gold, and the church turned faith into finance. Across continents, sacred vaults stored not relics, but deposits. The Pilgrim's Cross became a symbol of credit. Letters of exchange replaced coins. What was once divine offering was now interest-bearing salvation. Soon, cathedrals began to resemble early banks, majestic, fortified, and guarded by faith. The church preached forgiveness of sins, yet denied forgiveness of debt. The soul might be saved through confession, but the body remained chained to repayment. Debt had become eternal, as endless as divine judgment itself. When nation-states rose, they adopted this holy model. Kings borrowed in God's name, waged wars, and left generations owing invisible empires of gold and interest. Every prayer whispered beneath stained glass windows echoed the same ancient vow. I owe, therefore I am. And when paper money appeared, it carried sacred markings. In God we trust. The statement wasn't about spirituality, it was about faith in the system. People no longer believed in divine miracles, they believed in financial ones. By the time the Renaissance dawned, the bankers of Florence had replaced the bishops of Rome. The church no longer needed to control heaven, it controlled credit. And so, the temple of debt lived on, sanctified, systematized, and silently worshipped in every transaction. In the modern world, gold no longer backs our money, belief does. The coins and notes we touch are just symbols of a deeper illusion, collective faith in value. For centuries, kings and priests stamped their faces on currency to command obedience. Now, central banks do the same, not with metal, but with numbers on screens. When the U.S. abandoned the gold standard in 1971, money lost its anchor to reality. It became pure story, held together by trust. A dollar is worth a dollar not because of what it contains, but because everyone believes it is. The market itself became the new church, its graphs the stained glass windows of capitalism. Traders chant prices. Economists interpret prophecies. The Federal Reserve speaks, and the world listens like disciples awaiting divine decree. Every interest rate cut or rise feels like a revelation. The rituals of old, prayer, sacrifice, faith, have become credit, consumption, and speculation. Then came the digital age, the era of invisible money. Cards replaced cash. Data replaced gold. And cryptocurrencies, born from rebellion, ended up worshiping the same God, belief. Bitcoin has no army, no state, yet it thrives because people believe it will. Faith has gone fully digital. In this system, value is no longer measured in metal or labor, but in trust and attention. Corporations mint influence. Algorithms print desire. Every click, every purchase, every like adds to the invisible gospel of profit. We no longer pray to gods above, we invest in systems below. The altar has become the smartphone screen. The priesthood is now the algorithm. And the new scripture of humanity reads simply, in belief, we trust. For centuries, humanity has lived inside a vast, invisible equation, a promise to repay what can never be repaid. Every civilization, from Mesopotamia to Wall Street, has built its world upon the same unspoken foundation. You owe something. You owe labor to the state, taxes to the ruler, money to the bank, time to your employer, and purpose to society. Debt has become not just an economic system, but a spiritual framework. But what happens when the entire system depends on endless borrowing, from the planet, from the future, from ourselves? Every tree cut, every resource mined, every minute of attention spent scrolling, it is all part of a grand overdraft against existence itself. The earth is the creditor now, and its patience is running out. We've reached a strange moment where money grows faster than meaning. Wealth multiplies, but satisfaction decays. People chase zeros in their bank accounts like monks chasing enlightenment, only to find emptiness in abundance. The gods of debt promise freedom through possession, but deliver bondage through desire. In this final stage, humanity isn't just in financial debt, it's an existential debt. We owe the future an apology. We owe the planet a breath. We owe ourselves silence after centuries of noise. And maybe that's the last payment, not in coins or crypto, but in conscious awakening. The realization that the debt was never real, only the belief in it was. When we finally stop believing that value must always be owed, perhaps that's when the true economy begins. The economy of presence, connection, and freedom from the oldest god of all, debt itself.